See it as well so I can see you all comments because I very much want this to be a conversation. All right, and we are live. The nylon, I know, but I just like the nylon, brother. Shout out to the family. I want to get into this conversation. Actually, Blue Pill, I seen a snippet of you and Black Magic speaking on this. And the Terrance Howard, Eric Weinstein conversation is what prompted me to have this discussion today. We reached out to Terrance Howard, and at the time he said he was filming the wonderful film, and he said that he could do it, but it would have to be, live stream on the computer, and that's not our style. I'd rather have the in-person energy exchange. So I told him, let's postpone it, and let's wait till we can have a real sit down so we can do a real high level conversation. Now, first I want to dig into why is this conversation interesting in the first place. So everybody that's on Instagram, make sure you meet me at YouTube because I'm closing this down and I'm going to see you all there. Now I'm going to pull this up on my computer so that I can see you all as we stream. Okay, good. So the one thing I want to say about this conversation is the reason that this is so interesting to the world is because we have been fed so much filth and garbage, and science has no morals. And I think that the science establishment, first of all, is not a establishment of righteousness, even though they tried to present themselves as a dignified group. A lot of them do not follow a spiritual foundation and a lifestyle that validates the science that they follow. It's like a doctor that smokes cigarettes, right? I wouldn't want to take advice from him or her that are overstressed and obese. And so when we think about sciences, we think about cleanliness because we think about the white coat and, they wear suits and ties, and there's a fraternal structure and order to the way that the society in that club is kept. But what is the moral structure and what is the integrity of science today? Scientists are bought and sold all throughout the world and traded like cigarettes in a prison, working for the highest bid. When one would think about science, you would think about a man or a woman who would not use their scientific mind and or capability for something that could be toxic and or destructive. But as we look at the way our food is set up, the way science is used to manipulate, brainwash, destroy, feed us garbage on a daily basis, that is because that the scientific community has sold out to capitalists. So again, it becomes the question is, what is the integrity of science? And then we get into another foundation about mathematics because mathematics is supposed to represent a fundamental truth about the universe. I was always taught that Islam is mathematics in the sense that and I have some notes here, that if it does not add up, then we can discard it. And that is an important instruction to follow. Because in religious texts, when things are out of order and something does not make sense, does it completely discard the entire text to be wrong? No, that's not the way we deal with it in the spiritual community. We may say this is wrong, but this one can be right. But in the scientific community, there's a little different in the way that it is scrutinized. So, as I was watching initially, looking at Terrance Howard, I thought he was a very interesting brother. Before the Joe Rogan episode when I seen him speaking at Oxford University and speaking about something other than entertainment, which is the normalcy for populist agenda and popular culture, is that black men and women represent entertainment and the arts. And if you're not representing the arts and entertainment, then we can't take you serious. And because the culture that we currently have has taken away the science, right? The technology, the engineering, the mathematics, we don't have that as a normalcy of conversation. So we are being horribly and horrendously robbed of our interests. So not only in black culture, but in society as a whole. One thing they talked about is you don't know what's going on in these academias. You don't know about what's going on in Harvard. I did a video the other day on how they've done a study about how there was, human studies and trials done about cordyceps, showing the actual performance of cordyceps, right? On, post-workout, and how it increases performance and decreases recovery. And there's a full breakdown we did, but that is not something that the world knows about. That is something, if you're interested in it, then you're going to study it, but we're not being curated that as news. No, what we get curated as news is celebrity gossip and the most infantile, destructive, toxic gossip on the planet Earth. And so what it leaves is society hungry. I mean, we so hungry because we've been distracted so long. Entertainment is mass distraction. So the moment that even if we don't understand the conversation, it is titillating to our senses and stimulating to our mind because it is aspirational to want to understand it. And this is why the Scientific American and Discovery Channel and History Channel and so many different things, when we were younger, we would love to go to the planetarium and go to the science center when we was younger. But why didn't society continue to feed that interest into the adult as something normal in society? And now we see that, China is becoming a technological superpower, a scientific superpower, because we're not interested, or at least we're not curated the interest so we don't develop in those areas. So even if it's a conversation with two men talking about concepts and physics and mathematical concepts that we don't understand, the world would tune in to listen as if they're watching a movie, right? And this becomes a higher form of entertainment. And what it really is showing how thirsty we are for high-level conversations. This is why high-level conversations has worked, and we have dominated over the last 3 years in culture and in society as having a #1 independent intellectual show that make you think. Now, we have not been supported by, black popular culture, not in the sense to where we get any funding or support or budget from that. We have not been supported by white culture and advertisers and things of that nature. Everything has been independent, and you would think that, wait a minute, isn't this the beautiful thing that we need? Brothers talking about science and metaphysics. No, they try to make fun of it in subtle ways. They tried to scrutinize it. They try to find an excuse. Well, you talking about aliens. This is why people watch it. No, they watching it because we are curating high-level interest that is stimulating the mind. That pineal gland feels active. Your brain feels electrified. Things are starting to make sense to you. Because when we were younger, we wanted to be scientists. But when we go on the Zeus network and all we see is fighting and depravity and toxicity, right? And that low-hanging fruit makes you interested in it, and we watch it and we say, well, this is what they like. No. They like something more, but you're not giving it to them. And so it's like being in an environment where when I was, and I'm gonna get to directly on Terrance Howard, it was like being in an environment. I went to Kansas City and I met a a woman that was a cook at a soul food restaurant, and she had an apron on, hairnet. Auntie come out and she said, Keys, I love those high-level conversations. And imagine she's watching the episode and we talking about healthy eating and vegan food. And she looks in our environment and it's a food desert. And somebody say, well, this is not a good business for this area because people in this area aren't interested in that. This is what they historically eat. So they're not taking in account of the exposure and the raising of the consciousness and the expansion. And so they're not curating towards those interests. So even if you have those as interests, they are not being fed. And if you speak about it to people who are not interested in it, you will be mocked. And I said, wait a minute, this has to change. So now we get back to Terrance Howard as he talked about, being able to do these beautiful, miraculous things. We have to first get to an understanding of the way that Terrance Howard thinks. Can we look at this as genuine? Because for me, a person genuine represents their spirit of genius. Genius is just your genuine spirit, that which you have to bring out. Had nothing to do with you being the smartest person in the world. It is about that genuine spirit that you have, that which you bring forth from inside. So when someone has a genuine interest in something and that is their spirit, then that is their genius showing. And we all have genius. Genius was a word that was flaunted and given at a particular time talking about someone's genuineness. They said we froze. We back? Let me make sure. Okay, we good. We back. So when I think about Terrance Howard, I was seeing his genius on display. Not the Western way and the modern way we talk about genius, because a person can have a high IQ and have done nothing in society. The way we talk about intelligence and the way that we quantify genius in today's time, right, is completely lost and lacks any merit. So as I was listening to him, I say, this man is a genius, right? He is a master of his craft in creative intelligence. His ability to assume characters and put them on display in front of the world, that is a level of genius. His wittiness and his ability to communicate, it is a level of genius. And there's something that psychology and science is not taking into account when we think about, more specifically, melanated genius, because our genius is wired differently. It doesn't speak the same. Our genius is wired differently. Have you ever been in school and you were taking a math class and you were able to get to an answer, but you couldn't show your math? And the teacher, they were mad at you. They said, wait a minute, did you cheat? I don't think you understand it, because if you can't show your math, I'm going to flunk you. And you say, wait a minute, but I can get to the answer. This is the way my brain works. And because you couldn't follow their protocol and their procedure, then you did not get the grade that represented your intelligence because you couldn't show the work based on their process. That happened to me in school. It made me not like, a teacher that I had, Miss Jones. And I realized that it wasn't about me. It was about, the class was about her. It was about the subject. It wasn't about bringing out my genuineness. It wasn't about bringing out my genius, how my mind works and how I could utilize my mind to solve problems. It wasn't about that. It was about me learning what she put in front of me and me being assimilated and indoctrinated to these processes and these techniques. And if I couldn't do it in their manner, then I was discarded. So now on paper, you can't prove you're a genius, but in your mind, you know you are. Then we get to the idea in science, in ancient Kemet, you had these Greeks that went over and They looked at the way that we measured the mind. And they said, we don't believe in spirit. We believe in the brain, the scene, the psyche, right? And so they created psychology, but we had spirituality, right? We had a way of measuring the soul, the spirit, the mind, all of it. But that's not what they conquered. They took psychology. They were very much materialist. They didn't understand the immaterial world beyond the five senses. And so to even today, when you're trying to measure yourself by Freudian stick of psychology, his scientific methods will not work for you completely because it is not based on your matrix. It is not based on your mind. It is not based on your system, because melanin itself is a dimension in which they don't understand to add. Just like you have two people and we may speak the same language and we may do the same things and we both human, but it's different when you absorb radiation. It's different when you absorb and you house that much energy. It will change the way you do things. So when we speak and we talk about philosophy and we talk about science, and I pose the question, which one comes first? Which one is of a higher degree, philosophy or science? Because sometimes we can take merit with philosophy. We can use creative license to understand something and come up with ideas without actually having all the low-level details together. And for me, philosophy is like the art of thinking, right? It is the art of thinking. And I believe, the art of thinking can lead you to, understandings that you don't always have proof of, except the proof that you thought of it, the proof of imagination. We look at the Dogon people that were able to chart stars, Sirius B, and all of that, and they didn't know how those people did it. We still look at wonders of the universe in this world and how they were able to align, cosmic realities on Earth with pyramids, right, at direct longitudes. They didn't understand how this was done. Their science doesn't explain it. And when their science doesn't explain it, they break away and they dismiss. And what you have to understand is when you have a spiritual mind, you're going to speak differently because you're going to speak with rhythm, right? They were getting hung up in a conversation about supersymmetry a lot. And he didn't understand that, when you have a rhythm, you don't stick to the rules. It's like in rap, right? You ever listen to Lil Wayne rap? and sometimes the things he says doesn't really make sense, right? But he has the poetic license to be able to get away with that in this realm. And the thing about science, at least the science that the Western science and the contributors of that and the religion of Western science has its own language, and that language does not have rhythm in it. That language is not poetic, right? And so when we hear the words, we say that as long as the words can describe a meaning of something that I can see in my head, then it is valid for me to use. And they say, wait a minute, no, that does not fit the paradigm of why we created it. And we say, well, we are creators. We have that license to use it in the way that we want to. Now you can act like you don't understand what I'm saying, or you can ask me what I mean, and then we can agree upon that term and we can move forward. Because the point of it is to get to an understanding so that we can grow upon this and we can evolve upon these ideas. And the greater part about the fact that Terrance Howard was speaking on science is the fact that he's getting people to see the entertainment community has more interest than just entertaining in art. If entertainers can be politicians, then they can be scientists. Now you have to show and prove if you say you are what you say you are. Now that part we don't have. The problem is the lack of respect for people that are in the process of showing and proving, because they try to be dismissal and fly swat as if that they are God. And see, they don't have an understanding of the comedic science in which we engineer ourselves. They couldn't tell you how the black man in America has engineered himself to be a god amongst his peers on the planet Earth. They could not explain that with science. They can't explain your rhythm with science. Not their science, but our science we can. They can't explain your mind with it. They can't explain the godhood and the God spark and the soul in which we have with their science, because it is limited. Because if you don't have the spiritual essence within it, then your science will always have a missing equation. Science without God is laughable. So when I listen to the episode, first, I want us to know that, when you have resources and knowledge and money, you have to know how to, a man is only as powerful as the way he can utilize his resources. He is not powerful because he has them. It's the way that you utilize them. And when you are focused on assimilation, you give up something to be a part of. And what I was watching, it felt like Terrance Howard was giving up something to be a part of, which he respects. He respects this scientific community that he wants to be a part of and, quite frankly, accepted in. But what I seen on display, there was a level of genuineness and genius that I seen from our brother Terrance Howard, that he is a self-learner. And when you have a self-learner, you go through a non-linear path of learning, because your learning path is completely based on your interests. It is not guided through a mentorship, right? It is not guided through the curriculum system. It is guided based on your interests. Oh, this is sparking my interest. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. In order for me to understand this more, I need to understand what this word means. Oh, I've discovered this person. So you are interested and you start discovering. And in that discovering, in order to go deeper into your interest, you have to have a certain learning curve. And it seems that Terrance Howard developed his learning curve by picking up these different pieces. Oh man, the Walter Russell, this is interesting, this foundation. And he was able to bring color and visualize his ideas and have an intuitive understanding of it. And then he took the knowledge that he did have and his capabilities and he applied them and he animated them. And this is the important part, because spirituality is breath. It is breathing life into things. So when you have psychology without spirituality, then you do not have animation. And so when we breathe life to things, we bring motion into it. We bring energy into something that was once dead. So he took something that was two-dimensional, like the flower of life, and he brought life into it. And he brought it into another sphere. And this is where they don't understand. Why are you animating things? Why are you so animated? Why are you bringing so much life into something? Our science is flat. Our science is dead. Our science doesn't move. It doesn't have all of these different things that you can do with it. It is not malleable in the way that you are bending it. It is like the kid on a matrix bending the spoon, and you are disobeying the laws of physics because you're using your mind and you are acting as if you are a god. And they say, wait a minute, you can't do that. And you would think a community as smart as that community claims to be, they say, I get what he's doing. He's interested in something, and he has a creative interest and a scientific interest, and this is good because we need more people to take on these interests. But instead, they say, how dare you? How dare you get in front of a mass group of people and talk about these scientific, paradigms and be dismissal of them and say you have something greater. And instead of the scientists coming on there and say, wait a minute now, I appreciate him having such vigor and such animated speech about these things. And he speaks about these things in a way he's just able to move them to fit into his narrative and ideas and philosophies and linchpins and sacred geometry and ideas. And they say, let me help you all understand what he's trying to do and what we have already done in this mathematical space and what we have already done in the world of science and physics. And it becomes an opportunity for you to be able to grasp an audience instead of try to degrade a man because of his interest. And he happens to be famous and happen to have a platform and happen to be able to speak to a larger audience. But because there's this fight, right, of maintaining this order, it's like a mafia. I heard my brother Blue Pill and Black Magic talking about it. He said like a mafia, because the brother Eric Weinstein was real mafia with him. You know what I'm saying? Real mafia with him. I said, this man acting like he a straight up gangster the way he talking. Real mafioso, you know? And I respect Terrance Howard because as an independent self-learner, his journey of development, of understanding science, is not a linear path. It is like a constellation of stars connecting together to create this universe of ideas that in order to bring it to life, to animate it, he has to have people who can help him go in and find what parts of his ideas that can be useful and practical to the world. And what you have to do to, and I'm not saying anything about his ideas completely. I don't know which ones have the most practical use case completely. Except the linchpins, which are a feat of marvel engineering, because they have been proven to actually work. You can use them. They do have aerodynamics to where they can have flight, which within itself is beautiful and genius, because here's a man that took an idea and he brought upon this shape that he can actually use, right, in engineering. And Eric Weinstein was telling him that, you know, you probably could make more headway in engineering, because what is engineering? Engineering is animating ideas, bringing them to life. When you engineer something, so you're taking that spirit again to where you can have an idea. You don't have to know the maths. The math don't have to be mathematically sound. You can just have an idea. You can write something on paper like Michelangelo. Well, he was writing down ideas. He didn't know the math. He didn't know the aerodynamics. He didn't know how to actually get it into flight. But then an engineer can build it and the science can be figured out, and then you have contribution. And so the highest level of thinking to me is philosophical, right? Now, what brings that philosophy into life is the science, the process, and the reproduction of that process over and over makes it a science, proven, right? But it first starts with the abstract ideas that disobey what we already know, because they have to disobey to be disruptive, and the most disruptive ideas come in and disrespect the laws that have been laid. They say, wait a minute, these laws, I see what you all doing, but how about we create things that haven't been done before? I've seen it in my mind. That means it's possible. And isn't that what we've been doing as a human collective? Seeing things in the mind's eye and then bringing them into reality and then learning the science later, as though the idea does not have to have the mathematics with it when it comes up, but it's the imagination that is the hierarchy. And then we breathe life and we animate it from a 2D reality to a 3D reality. That's the highest level. That's the God particle within the mind taking something from light to dark. They act like they don't understand the process of bringing thought into reality. It's just when you get into the math. Now the math got the math. But when he started talking about the sacred geometry and he started animating it, that's when he was taking the visions that he had in his lucid dream state that he spoke upon, when he went into, you know, that consciousness, and he was able to abstract ideas from that dimension. And he kept those ideas at the forefront of his mind, and it seemed so abstract in his dream. And what he could remember, he started to construct that. He started to construct ideas around that, and what he brought to life and what he animated was his inventions, which he has his patents, because this is very much of a meta world, right? This is very much metaphysical in its nature. So it's disrespectful to take someone's ideas and trash them, because human beings throughout time have been able to produce great feats of marvel and bring us into, new eras of innovation and technological paradigms, not because the math added up, right? Not because science agreed with it, but because it was a thought in the mind that was once a dream, that was in the darkness. And anytime you tell somebody your ideas, they will think you're crazy. And what you have to know is that, I did like the fact where he broke down a bunch of different things, but he talked about the contradiction and the unity of knowledge, which is such a beautiful statement within itself, because there is a mathematical code over the Quran that talks about that same principle, about the contradiction and the unity of knowledge, that if one thing is wrong, we essentially have to dismiss the rest as well. So he kept doing what he called, I wanted to create a steel man. And steel man, if you want to go through it, is he was giving him a basis for his argument, right? Even though he was being dismissive and he kept talking about his mind and calling him crazy and, basically sunning him a lot throughout the conversation, but doing it in a manner of saying that, hey, I'm just a friend, I'm a peer, I know the world is watching, I can't come off as this arrogant scientist, I have to do it in a way to where I greatly separate you and me, but I establish some of your things as good. After I establish myself as an authority, when I say pat on the back, that was good, boy, I like your linchpins, the world would say, oh, look at what he did, he gave him a little bit while he destroyed everything else. That's not enough. But I do want to go through the framework in which he was establishing what he called the steel man. And in the steel man, he was providing him a framework in which these ideas can be organized in a logical approach that creates clarity. So there's a linear process of going through these things, so that we can understand that if something within this is not working, now we can say, okay, well, this doesn't work. Maybe this does. But let's frame this, because we do have this problem in society where we disregard people without getting to a point of understanding. And I don't like talking to people about things. Somebody asked me to say, hey, are you a Muslim? Do you believe we are gods? And I have to first, wait a minute. What is your definition of God? Because we can't talk about God until I get to your definition. And now we can have clarity to go on a linear process of understanding. But without that baseline understanding, then we're having two different conversations. You could be having one based on feeling, right? You could be having one that has a completely different interpretation than I have. Then we have to sometimes go even deeper about, as we define things, the words in the definition, what they mean to you. So when you have conversations on a large stage, it is very important that you define your words to get a baseline so that everybody understands what are you saying, so that when they're arguing with you, they're arguing with you on the basis of your own argument, not what they have in their mind. So this idea that I need to come up with a picture of who you are before I disagree with you is good. And that was the part of the conversation that was intelligent if you're going to take something from it completely. Now, the conversation where he talks about 1 times 1 equals 2. And I believe the way that he broke that down, he said that is where he was using that as his philosophy to show the contradictions, right, in math, because there are these contradictions and things of that nature. But again, that's when you don't have the spirituality in it. It's when you don't have the spirituality in it, when man is just operating off five senses and he's not operating off his intuition and a multitude of senses that go beyond that, like our ancestors have had. And you're not operating with understanding of the soul dimension, right? In the spiritual aspects of things, then there's always going to be something missing. And you don't understand that we are gods. And if you don't have that fundamental truth within yourself and that knowing, then the lens in which you view things will be skewed, right? Your religion can make you see things different. Your confidence can make you see things different. But definitely your educational background and or understanding. Now, as we talk about mathematics, mathematics is such a beautiful language because when you observe numbers, you observe the universe, right? And as we talk about things like synchronicity, synchronicity couldn't be defined by science. It can be defined by, in spiritual science, it can be defined by intuitive understanding. Yes, right? A person may see 333 and they call it angel numbers, and you're talking about repeated vibrations in space-time, and you apply meaning as what we know as the observer effect, and you decide what it means because the particle of the observer is God, and you are the God in that. And so each observer is a God in the way that they interact with reality. So when you're getting someone's perception, you're getting the perception from that God. Now, you know, as we go into theology, we are not big G, the God. We are small gods. We still die. We still decay in our bodies. But we have that power. We have that will. And so Terrance Howard is just explaining, just like any other human, as God has defined and placed meaning as he observes things, because the observer effect is that, you know, each person's level of consciousness, whether it is higher consciousness or lower consciousness, sees something differently. If I walk in a room, right, and I observe that room, I'm going to see something different than somebody else who has a completely different point of view. I might see a symbol that means something to me. I might hear something that means something to me. I might judge it from a racial, an economic point of view. I might judge it from a spiritual point of view, right? I can judge it from many different viewpoints. I can judge it to be judgmental, or I can do it from a non-biased judgmental point of view, which actually allows me to take in the full grid and the full picture. Or when you know too much, you can be stuck. So I can read science from a point of view of a box because I know so much. I'm not open to seeing something else. And this is why scientists in Silicon Valley, and they have done this since the 70s, they have done, you know, psychedelics, because their mind would get stuck in this loop of what they know and they couldn't think outside of that box and that paradigm. And so then they would do LSD so they can think outside it. And they would be able to solve problems very quickly after they would do this. And so sometimes a scientist is so smart in what they know, right? It's like you know your family so well, but you don't know that they could have had an interaction with somebody and really changed their mind. And from that point on, they may be a vegan for the rest of their life. And somebody is trying to explain to you that this person just changed their life. You're like, no, I know them too well. Nah, because of all the collection of information and data and patterns and stats that you know about this person, is telling you that that can't be true. But your knowledge, right, is now not, is defying you because you know so much about this person, you're not being able to add in the unexpected, the shift that could occur, the difference that could happen. So this is why it takes outside influence a lot of times to be disruptive, to shake things up. Right? To say, wait a minute, how about you move this box of things that you know so that we can get to something different? And with science, it's so stuck into this religion. You have peers who review things that agree with other peers that's reviewing it from a scientific paradigm that came from another peer. And so this is why a lot of times things stay the same and they're slow to evolve. Then you have Western science and Eastern science, right? And then these two sciences have different perspectives, right? Western medicine and Eastern medicine. So it's a very interesting world that we live in that we're not getting a full picture. So as we look at these things, we can take so many lessons from them, right? First, we can understand why the world will always punish you for disagreeing with the populist ideas and agenda. Then we can understand why we're so interested in being stimulated by outside ideas, because the matrix in which we live in does not feel right. And feelings cannot be excluded when we're talking about reality, because when something feels off, that has to be included into the factor of the intuitive mathematics, right? The gut, because the gut is his own brain. The heart is his own brain. But we act like the only brain that we can process from is this pink sponge that we have in our head. And this is why so many things are off. So when we look at the world and say, wait a minute, that science don't seem like that's the highest science. That math don't seem like that's the highest math. Because we know that if we can project ourselves thousands of years in the future, and they have these ideas about, civilization reaching different peaks, to where we're able to stop operating off dead coal, and we're able to go to cold fusion, and we're able to harness the complete power of the sun as energy sources, and we go into one planetary system to another planetary system. That means that we're going to have to figure out something that we don't know now. That means that something that we don't know will be figured out, and maybe we don't. Maybe we build a quantum computer and we never see the work of the quantum computer, but the quantum computer figures it out. Because right now AI is doing things and these scientists can't tell you how it did it. They just know that this machine learning algorithm that they have is working in a way, but they can't show you the work. And so why do we think that that's not possible when it comes to man? That man can configure ideas and solutions without being able to show work. But man can build machines that can't show work, but that can come up with solutions. So when we get into the super era, what we're going to go into is the superhuman era, where human beings are going to want to grow and evolve alongside of these machines. While the world is worried about, immigrants taking black jobs, hey, Americans, I got something for you. It's going to be the robots and the AIs taking your black job. They're going to be the ones taking the Hispanics' job. While we trying to fight against each other, it's going to be the robots and the supercomputers and the quantum machines taking your black jobs. But if you can keep the people divided at this level, instead of cooperating with each other and collaborating on these large ideas, right? And saying, wait a minute, what if he is right? How about we find meaning in it? How about we just explore the parts that are useful, try to discard it, because thinking differently, thinking creative, thinking in the spiritual manner gets us to a completely different place. And right now we have disharmony and we don't have divine unity of the collective, right? Because we are not sourcing all our brain power to think of how to advance humanity. But that's what these machines are doing. They're taking all these ideas and they're bringing them together, and that amalgamation of that bringing together allows them to come up with something different than a human being do, because they don't have the bias of saying that, well, I'm not going to listen to this person because they're Asian. I'm not going to listen to this person, right, because they're Russian. I'm not going to listen to this person, they're German. I'm not going to listen to this person because they're Afro. I'm not listening to this person with they black. They say information is information, data is data, ideas are ideas. Give them all to me, feed me, feed me. Now I have perspectives, right, that are not just a 360 perspective, but I'm seeing in multi-dimensions, right? I can see things that the average person can't see. And how many of us have gotten to points to where we believe things that we can't prove, but we know it to be true because it's in our hearts. And when they don't teach you how to decode your heart and how to decode your gut, right, and only filter things to your brain, we're not even inventing from our heart. We're not inventing from our gut. And I think what these conversations are doing is they're sparking interest, right, in new scientific revelations. They're sparking interest in new scientific revelations. We want a new earth. And we're saying that I want that earth to be built on spiritual science. Because this science, number one, has no morality, and it is not evolving at a pace that is increasing the quality of human life. And the current paradigm of science is not taking in the genius of the average human being and what they have to add to the collective, unless they go through this fraternity, unless they go through the academic process and what you have laid out to say that this is the only way you can be validated in your ideas. And I'm not saying they need to go away with it. I think we need to be more scientific. I think we need to press upon these conversations, but be careful in doing it in a way to where you give up your confidence and you assimilate, especially the people that's not like us. He talked about how Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a funder, right? And he took over the peer review process. But they didn't talk about in this conversation how her husband, what's the guy that everybody talk about? Epstein. He was a funder of these scientists. He was a funder of these scientists, right? And when you think about that, you say, wait a minute, why was Epstein funding scientists? They throwing these parties and he's giving them money? What does that do? What kind of power and control do they have over these people? Maybe they have revelations that they won't talk about. Maybe it's the same thing in politics when they fund the politicians and they know something that's right that they could do, or they should stop a certain bill, or they should stop a certain Monsanto, or stop a certain chemical, Red 40, from being in the products that you eat. But they're getting paid to. And maybe there's a scientist that might write a peer review that goes this way, right? Or they might one that assuages the public's interest, right, in the interest of big pharma and the money, because you have to understand that without this money, there are no scientific studies. So when you have private money funding public science for whose interest, then you know that there's a deep rabbit hole to where there's a lack of integrity, and there requires a scrutiny, and all of these things are disingenuous. So you can't talk about Terrance Howard and his ideas when he wanted to go on the show and talk to the world about it. And he wanted to have somebody, please scrutinize me, please help me evolve these ideas, please help me make it more concise. I want to engineer something that can change the world. That is the interest, that is the spirit in which he is presenting his ideas to the world. And I have to judge a man a lot when I look at his spirit in which he is producing. The only thing I would say about the brother is you need to sit with the gods, but more importantly, you need to learn how to use your resources to align with your ideas, right? Because at the end of the day, we are in this phase of master building. What can we build from our ideas? Not just what ideas can we present. And we have these tools of artificial intelligence, and you have your human intelligence. And what you do is you use that to augment, right, the human mind so that you can enhance yourself during this day and age and during this time. I would love to have a sit down with all different types of scientists, because my show is to make you think. I might sit here and I talk about spirituality. I respect scientists. I respect the process in which they use. I respect academia. I respect scholarship. I respect it all because it is a discipline. But the discipline is only as good as the disciple in which you gather it from. So we have to look at source when we look at discipline, because discipline is just being a disciple of something. Oh, this is the way you teach? Well, this is the way I'm going to learn. And I'm going to stay in that box and be disciplined based on me being a disciple of your ways. So if we don't trust and or respect the source, right, of the discipline, then the disciple has been taught wrong, even though they're using this metric, right, to validate their work and their existence. So at this point in time, I want to open up the floor, 2 questions that anyone may have. because I really just wanted to give my thoughts, and I wanted to share the way I was feeling about the conversation. Now, to go deeper into the details of what's right and what's wrong is a completely different conversation. Going into the sacred geometry, going into the methodology. But one thing that I do appreciate about these conversations, especially like the ones that's had on High Level Conversations, the Joe Rogan podcast, Black Magic, is these are precisely the things that should keep us up at night. Not the celebrity gossip, not those things. And we're going to have interests and arguments. It should be about science and mathematics and engineering. It should be about spirituality, right? It should be about knowledge of self and building new worlds and new sciences and new earths. That is something that I love for us. All right, let me see if there's any questions. If there are no questions, then I will be exiting this one. Do you plan on having Terrance on High Level Conversations? I do. Inshallah, when I go out to Atlanta, we can set that up. I would love to have him on. I want to sit down and actually do more breakdowns when it comes to science on my channel, because I think that that's something that's necessary. I want the next generation of scientists and our culture to be stimulated by these ideas. And we need more ideas that we can grow up and aspire to achieve. And that's something that we have to get. We need more theories that a younger generation can say, yo, I want to make that happen. This is why I want to get into science. This is why I want to study mathematics. This is why I became an engineer, to see if I can bring that to life, because that is the current paradigm of science. They evolve upon existing ideas and theories. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to find some really good questions. So, how can we get our culture to focus enough to evolve? Really good question. I believe we may be in a deficit right now because distractions got us in a chokehold. But I think what has to happen when you talk about shifting paradigms, that they have to become dominant in order for that paradigm to shift. So when we talk about dominating paradigms, it has to be in our culture, in the sense of our events. It has to be, right, and represented. Matter of fact, let me bring up this framework that I have for you all. I have a framework for paradigm shifting, right? And when it comes to paradigm shifting, first is bringing awareness. It's recognizing existing limited beliefs and paradigms, right? So what are the limited beliefs that we have about our culture? Most of the time we believe that we can't unify. We believe that we can't build anything because we're triggered by the traumas of the past, that if we build something, it will be torn down, right? And so when we start identifying those limiting beliefs, we have to then build a system to replace that. So for me, an easy one to do that with would be media. We have to have vision of seeing ourselves at a higher level. We have to have visions of seeing ourselves collaborating and unifying. And that's not easy, because the reality of it is that we're terrible at it. We're terrible at unity. I've been working for a long time to try to bring groups together behind the scenes, and it's very hard to get people to come together because the values are not in alignment. So what you would do is you create a value structure, and that value structure would then be sent out so that we can find those who agree or disagree. Say, hey, these are my values. Are you in alignment? If you're in alignment, we're tribe, let's move. If you're not in alignment, you are part of a different culture. The problem is we use that word culture as an umbrella that acts as everybody fits under, but the reason that we're fighting, because we're saying that I don't like your culture. And you say, I don't agree with your culture. Well, what's the values of your culture? Well, what's the values of yours? So you put out the values, right? And the values let you know who to connect with. Oh, this person agrees with toxicity, right? This person agrees with death and fast sex and the culture that is not conducive to family building and things of that nature. I don't want to be a part of your club. I don't like that. This person wants to build on family and righteousness and wealth, right? And intellect. Wait a minute. I like where you're going with this. Let's build, bro. So it has to be built on a protocol of values that are in alignment with each other so you know how to pick. But the problem is that we have all of these ethnic differences of values and we pick each other based on being a part of this umbrella word culture when we're all different people. So this is why we don't unify, is because we don't have the same values. This person, man, they are complete capitalists and you're trying to bring them an idea that's based on passion and impact. And they saying, bro, if this not maximizing income and capital, then I don't want to be a part of it. And they may have a little bit of passion, but the way that their values are aligned, the money is way higher than the impact. So the moment that the impact gets in the way of the capital, then that's when they out. So you have to understand that because I've seen it over and over and over. Now you have to challenge after you bring awareness to it. And awareness is a phase that we're in, and we are in the challenging. Actively question and challenge the beliefs that we have. What do we believe? Beliefs is something that we don't even know. We can't agree on a timeline history of our origins. We can't agree on the name of God as far as a belief system. So here's all this talk about unity and moving forward, but we don't even have the same beliefs. So we have to challenge it to see what you really believe. And I would say your beliefs really going to be in the results of what you strive for and what you do. Because you can say you believe in eating clean, but then every single day you eat junk. So you don't really believe. No, that's not real, true belief. What you believe, I would have to say, is based on what you do. Right? Or at least your habits or your patterns are not aligned with your true beliefs. And maybe you don't have an environment that's conducive to those beliefs. But right now it has to be a challenge to make people see themselves and put a mirror to say, wait a minute, you're not aligned with your beliefs. And we have to challenge that every single space. Whether we see it in Essence Fest, or we see it at BET, or we see it at Revolt, or we see it in the way that we do music, the way we do life, the way we do family. We have to challenge those beliefs and get people to think so that we can get to an agreed upon foundation of truth and honesty in what we call culture. Now, after you do that and you challenge it, you have to then replace it. Once you replace it, you have to introduce something new, a new culture. I say, man, stop watching. You watching that crap you watching over there, man. You watching Zeus Network. Come watch High Level Conversations. That's replacing it, giving you an alternative, right? We say, man, what's that crap you putting in your body? You're killing yourself, boy. Man, look, sis over here then turn the fruit into a burger. You know what I'm saying? Like, and try it. It tastes good as hell. This is jackfruit right here. We're giving you an alternative. It got the same texture. It's better, right? Look, we got a whole slew of shows that you can entertain yourself with, but at the same time, they're going to stimulate higher level interests. Oh, wait a minute. You don't want to go to the club? I got something better for you. We got this event over here. It's going to be fire. It's going to be popping, but it's better. So we have to introduce alternative lifestyle and alternative culture, right? And that goes into our entertainment, our events, right? The way we do all these different things to provide a replacement, because when a person gets rid of one habit, it creates a imbalance. And that imbalance makes a person want to fill that up. So this is why we end up going back to our old habits, because we feel this imbalance, right? And so there has to be a fasting from it and then a replacement, but we have to give an alternative So when you're telling somebody to do something, if you're not providing an alternative, then you're not following a protocol to create a shift. Then practice. Practice makes perfect. We have to consistently apply these paradigms daily. It can't just be, okay, we have InvestFest, great. But how are we practicing investing rules in our lives? How are we focusing on having assets? How are we living at a high level daily, right? Are we having conversations? Are we reading, right? Are we exercising? Are we having community conversations? Are we meeting weekly with family? Are we building? It has to be a daily regimented lifestyle in our personal life so that when each person comes around each other, it's genuine. But if everybody faking, you know what I'm saying? You God, when it's meeting, we having a God body tribe, but then in your individual life, you're not living like that when you get home, when y'all meet with each other. You're meeting your real true self, not your ideal self. So now it's like, bro, we been niggas, and now y'all start acting like niggas in front of each other because that's really how y'all been behaving in the shadows. But in the shadows, if you're behaving the same way you behave in a light, when y'all get around each other, then you increase that light within each other, and then that starts to grow. So it has to be a habitual practice, yes, with discipline on a daily basis. There has to be rites of passage that grow people into this culture. And it has to, last but not least, evolve. We have to continuously refine and evolve the mindset. And we have to bring it to modern time. You have to be in time and on time. So as we're deprogramming and reprogramming and bringing it up to modern day, it has to evolve. Because otherwise, when it gets, it gets old, right? Then that mindset is not enough to deal, right, with the new issues and the new problems and the new distractions. So the mindset has to be like our AI. If you got an AI that says, sorry, you asked it about something in 2024, and they say, wait, my data set is only from 2020. So what they have to do is they have to do a refresh, a knowledge refresh. So we have to have our knowledge constantly up to date because our problems are modern. So our solutions have to be modern. We have to have a mindset that can deal with it. And so we have to evolve past this old way of thinking, these limiting beliefs, right? We have to evolve past our old patterns and our old habits and our old way of viewing, seeing, and feeling things. Right? When you catch yourself to say, man, I was about to judge this person. I ain't even on that no more. I'm gonna go this way. Now you start to become a new person because your brain patterns and thoughts operate on new wave cycles. So now you're thinking and seeing and producing different. That's the way to go about it. So thank you for that question. Because that was a very beautiful question. And I think that there are so many more things that we can do. Sustainable farming, economics, family, spirituality. A lot of you all ask me about your master teachers. I think that continue to study them, but show and prove. I think at the basis of all of this, if you are right, just show and prove. I think that we have to get away from trying to debate people into thinking our way, and we should just show and prove that our way is superior through proof, through the results. And if you can't show and prove, then you don't really know it, do you? So that eliminates all the debating, because debating don't mean you're right. You can win a debate and still be wrong. You just had more knowledge at the time than the person you were debating with, right? Somebody can debate about something and take a completely correct position, but they don't know how to defend it because they don't have the knowledge ready to their mind to defend it. And so I don't like debating, because debating does not mean that I'm right. There are many people who agree with things that are right, but to someone else, they couldn't defend it. Somebody that has more knowledge on the opposite subject, but doesn't mean that it's superior knowledge. See, Socrates would question you and question you and question you, and it was a form of deceit. So we debate back and forth, believing that it makes us right, and it doesn't. A child can tell me something, and because I'm more knowledgeable and have more wisdom and experience, I can make that child believe that they're wrong when they're completely right. But I won the argument. I won the debate. So no, I think showing and proving is more important than debating. Build something with it. Produce results from it. And whichever is superior, it will produce more results. Whichever science and whatever knowledge that we have is superior. So we should look around and say, okay, what knowledge produces the most results? And then that's the one that should be in the lead, because that is the one that is proven to be superior. And then there's no more arguing from that. But when you know you have an inferior knowledge and you believe the only way that you can win is in the realm of words because you can't show and prove, you're going to want to debate all day long. Don't do that. Show and prove. That's the God body way. So I appreciate you for having this conversation with me. Shout out to the brother Terrance Howard. You know, Black Magic, he used a great example, an analogy. He said in that conversation, it was like watching in the new Matrix Resurrection movie when the therapist, Neil Patrick Harris, was trying to convince Keanu Reeves, Neo, he was wrong. He was trying to tell him that all these ideas that he was having, the stuff that he was coming up with, it wasn't really happening in his head, because he was trying to convince him to stay in this paradigm, stay in this matrix, stay in place. But ultimately, Neo was right? But the devil, if you allow him to deceive you, he will. But you have to be confident in what you know. And you have to focus on showing and proving, because then the science will work itself out. The math will work itself out. There are concepts that science has not reached yet. There are ancient civilizations that are advanced in ways that modern man has not caught up with. And so we have to be careful thinking that our modern technological advancements make us a more advanced people when our spiritual technology, is not operating at the highest level for us to manifest based on what's on our spirit. Because if I ask you today, why is it that the masses are in a spiritual disagreement with the world that they live in? And if the masses are in a spiritual disagreement, then how come they collectively cannot manifest a better world if they are so far advanced? How are they allowing such a small group of people to have so much power and restriction over their spirit and will? Those who know thyself, they operate at a higher degree, and they're able to have their will undisrupted, changing reality, disrupting things, changing the colors of things, flying around, producing, manifesting. And they're like, wait a minute, y'all can do the same. The rest of the world looking at them in admiration, like, oh my God, y'all are gods, look at this. And it's like, I'm alive. I live in the same matrix you live in. Operate from that God within and produce. You know, there's a saying, it says, abracadabra, as I speak, I create. That's the magic. That is the magic. But it is more than that. As I think, I create. When you speak, you give vibration, and you bring sound, and you animate things into reality. You bring it into a different projection. It's just so as you're thinking and you're speaking, you're doing magic. Then you write it and you spell it. But when you forget how to use your mind, you have to be reminded. You are supposed to challenge things. But respect science, respect math, study it, learn it, so that you can engineer and you can build. But we need more philosophers. We need new thinkers on this earth. We need people that would challenge the current paradigm, because then it forces them to think and acknowledge ideas outside of what they actually know to be true. And if there's a beauty that comes from this whole entire debacle, it is that it is challenging the world to be stimulated with new ideas to project a better world currently than the one that we have. I'm 19 Keys. Keep on thinking. Peace to the gods.